Chapter 1. The sky was pink and beautiful. Our great sun rode high above, warming the air, which was scented heavily with lal flowers. As I walked to the main promenade of the garden, I began to think of you, and an instant before I rounded the turn, I knew that it must be your vibrant thought processes which stirred that memory into life. I had not seen you for a long time, or perhaps it only seemed long. Your studies had carried you away and had shown you the star trails. You would be called a cosmic engineer. You understood the technology and mechanical skills of hundreds of different races, and you were now a responsible and highly trained technician. I was not ready to go through space to the thousands of named and unnamed planets. There's no word in this language which expresses what I am, but the closest equivalent would be a student of philosophies. For the most part, my studies have been restricted to the works of other men, the fine intricacies, the subtle differences in viewpoint, the strange effects of even stranger customs. Now I felt I was able to cope with these many different races and hoped soon to travel the far-flung trails of our union. You had already seen and studied these races, and I thought perhaps our paths wouldn't cross again, but the star gods felt otherwise, for the instant before I saw you, I knew we would meet. You were sitting on a low bench, gazing upward, apparently relaxing. "Jovian," I called. "So the star gods have spared you." You looked at me then and smiled broadly. "I've been waiting for you, Bach." "Me?" "I called at your dwelling and learned that you always walk through the promenade at this time of day. I flew here and waited for you." I laughed. "Still the careful planner, I see." "Indeed, yes," you replied. "It saves much work." You rose and stretched, and I studied your face. We began walking leisurely, not paying much attention to where we were going. "Where do you usually go?" you asked. I stopped abruptly. "Frankly, I don't know. I always come this way, but, well, I pay little attention to where my feet carry me." "Have you had your mid-morning meal?" I shook my head. "Often I dine at the Fountains. It's a small but quiet place near the promenade. We can walk there in a few minutes." "How many?" you asked. 20 or 25. "As I thought," you snorted. "I have my air car here. Let us not abandon our technology for the sake of consuming our own resources." You guided me down a small path to an air car space and over to a flamboyantly open car. I surveyed the riot of colors. "Beyond a doubt, this is yours." "Of course," you replied. "But how did you know?" I pointed. "Your name is on it." In genuine puzzlement, you leaned over. "Where?" As I began to laugh, you looked back at me. "Oh, yes," you said wryly. "I had forgotten the ill logic you use in place of wit." You opened the door for me then, and in a moment we floated aloft. Once free of the ground, you seemed to break all restraint. Often in the past I had noted how free you became when off the ground. Perhaps you were, as I had many times said, the spirit of a bird in the body of a human. You seemed so joyously alive, so free and untrammeled in flight. Grinning, you looked away from the controls and asked, "Have you ever eaten your mid-morning at another place?" "Why, yes. Before I began my studies, I often used—" You burst out laughing. "Bach, you are a tree, firmly rooted to the same spot. Indeed, you are as difficult to move also. Let's find a place where you haven't eaten." "I'm agreeable," I replied. Of course, nothing too elaborate. It interferes with one's digestion. Naturally, you agreed, mocking my serious tone. We wouldn't want our digestions upset under any circumstances. You adjusted the controls, and I noticed the whine of air mounting, although the cleverly designed shields prevented even a wisp of air from blowing upon us, and the illusion of leisurely movement became stronger. Glancing behind us, I saw my home city fading in the distance, the city of flowers, perhaps the most peaceful of all places. "Where are we going?" I asked. "There are places in the city of flowers where I've not eaten." "But they're all alike," you explained. "I had in mind something unique, for instance, the gates of the universe." But my walk, and I have messages to dispatch." You smirked. "Do not be obstinate." I tried another tack. "The gates of the universe is a beautiful city, to be sure, but it's nearly halfway around Arkna. It has variety, and there is something of every culture in the Union there, but "My point exactly," you interrupted. "You did not enter the halls of learning to spend your life in solitude. What you need is some space, a dash of flavor in your routine." With that, you reached forward and increased the speed. It was true. I'd been buried in the small fragment of life which comprised my studies for so long that the scenery had acquired a certain novelty and freshness. I relaxed and began to observe the panorama of life beneath as it flashed by, scene by scene. "That's better," you murmured. "You look more as I remembered you." "I admit I feel better," I said. You studied me for a moment, then asked, "Do you not find philosophies monotonous sometimes? You have lost some of your gaiety." "It's an absorbing subject," I answered. "As I study the cultures and philosophies of aliens, I find a certain part of their alien viewpoints are accepted into my own life, at least while I'm studying them. For example, I've come to agree with a certain race which, upon reaching a physical age where activity is at a minimum, take their own lives. From their standpoint, it's a perfectly reasonable thing." You stared at me, unbelieving. "But why should anyone want to take his own life? After all, most persons look forward to the time when they can drop their endeavors and enjoy the near infinite varieties of things the universe offers. In fact, I'd almost decided to retire after my last expedition." "You won't," I said. You shrugged. "Perhaps. Yet retirement has much to recommend it." "True," I replied. "But you are definitely ambitious and far-seeing. Your innate curiosity and desire to learn, to be among the vanguard of the Union, will keep you at your tasks, even as my interests will keep me at mine for a long time yet." "Granting that this may be true," you said, "what bearing does it have upon taking one's life?" "Well, we have a near-perfect culture. We do things because we like to do them." You turned. "And what other reason could there possibly be?" "Some do things because they're necessities. They gather food because they'd starve if they didn't." "Not in the Union," you said. I nodded. "However, the race I was referring to has not entered the Union yet. Their culture and ancient customs have kept them from understanding the code. You see, they regard it a form of honorable action to take one's life when that person is no longer useful to the group, a weird and perverted philosophy which prescribes that the individual exists for the benefit of the group, rather than the reverse." You laughed heartily then. "How can an individual exist for a group? Isn't the group composed of individuals? Surely, The loss of one individual is but the loss of the microcosm. How can they possibly believe that man associates with man for the benefit of the group? It, um, it's called unselfishness, I believe. You see, they've invented a system which calls for action for the benefit of someone else. Oh, come now, you said. You're joking. Oh, no, I'm quite serious. It's considered improper to perform an action for yourself. It must be for the others, or for the group as a whole. This gives a sort of pseudo life to the group, or real existence which a group cannot have otherwise. It's an easy step then to worship this greater life, or group, to the point of sacrificing yourself and other individuals for it. Enough, enough, you said, waving a hand. I leave you to your philosophies. I shall stay with my technology. At least it is far less depressing. You know, under those circumstances, I too would take my life. It'd be worse than being chained. I smiled knowingly. I imagine you even rebel at the bend of gravitation which holds your body to the ground. Your good humor returned. I suppose you're right, you said, smiling. Certainly, I couldn't live unless I was free. You maneuvered the controls, and we dropped swiftly toward the fabulous gates of the universe. I thought to myself how much like you this city was, glittering and infinitely varied, exotically strange, exciting and interesting, a never-ending pageant of novelty. Perhaps I felt a touch of envy that I could not truly be a part of all this, but I could enjoy it through your eyes. We settled on a small landing area and stepped out, the glitter and mystery of the universe surrounding us. Well, we're here, I pointed out unnecessarily. And now for our mid-morning, you said. A short distance from the air car, we found a place. It was called the Nova, and its interior was decorated in a starburst design in keeping with the name. A gigantic image of an exploding star stretched forth across the ceiling, colors flashing and changing constantly. It was a fairly accurate representation of an unending explosion from the heart of a star. We made our way through the customers who were a cross-section of the Union. They were obviously at home in this atmosphere, many of them spacemen and technicians. This was to be expected, since the gates of the universe had the largest spaceport in our small portion of the universe. We settled ourselves on benches beside an unoccupied serving machine. I hesitated in my selection of food, but to you it seemed a simple matter. I followed your lead and watched strange and sometimes incredible foods appear. Indeed, I ate more than one should at mid-morning, but it was pleasant to be enjoying your company again. When we were finally finished, we rose and went outside. Let us find some place where we can talk, I said. We have much to discuss. Perhaps the drama? You suggested. I usually find myself becoming too preoccupied with the drama, I replied. Oh, well, I shall see that you do not become too involved, you insisted, guiding me toward one of the multifarious drama theaters. We entered the hushed building and paused to survey the dramas. Naturally, you don't remember these, but each person selects the play or scene which interests him most. You take the tiny cartridge and place it in the slot at the side of your seat. Then, as you lie back, your body sleeps, and the drama is played out in your mind, with yourself as a prominent character. By dropping a special cartridge into one or more additional chairs, they're connected together, and you may enjoy the drama with friends who play other characters. I paid no attention to the cartridge you selected, merely following you and seating myself in a chair in the dimly lit room. I touched the stud, activating the circuit as you dropped the flat metal case into the slot in the side of my chair. I saw you sink back in your chair. Then the familiar sense of timelessness touched me, or this remoteness from my surroundings. And then we entered the drama. We were riding in a rather large air car over wild and broken terrain. It took a slight effort to prevent myself from repeating the words projected into my mind by the transmitter. "Now, what do you think of this?" you asked before I could speak. "We can talk as much as we wish. You see, no one is in sight for thousands of miles." "What drama are we playing?" I asked. "Travels on primitive planets or something like that." I didn't really look. "Certainly is primitive," I remarked, glancing over the side. Come, you chided. "Don't get caught up in the play." "Yes, of course," I replied. "However, it does remind me that you've been going to places like this for quite some time now. When are you going to tell me about them?" "Not like this," you replied. "Some of the places I've been to are backward, but certainly they're far more advanced than this." I glanced out the window and saw that the air car had settled to the ground. Surrounding it were nearly 100 green creatures who bore only the slightest resemblance to ourselves. "What do we do now?" I asked. "I've lost the thread of the drama." "Go out and try some of your philosophy on them," you suggested. "It can't do any harm." "Ridiculous," I snorted. "After all, you and I may do as we please, but those people out there are parts of the drama. They'll have to behave as they were recorded." Nonetheless, I unfastened the edge of the air car and stepped out. I called greetings in the universal code language. The little green creature in the forefront made some sort of grunting noise and marched for the side of the car, ignoring me. From nowhere, a glittering metal necklace appeared, which the little creatures took and retreated. I turned and marched back to the air car. "You see, I've lost the stimulus entirely," I said. "That was supposed to be me who handed out the trinket. I'm forever losing the thread of these dramas. I much prefer being a spectator. I often—" I broke off with a gasp as I noted that your place in the air car was empty. I flashed a thought to the drama machinery, which cut off immediately. I sat up and saw that your seat was empty. Glancing behind me, I found you approaching with another transmitter. "Oh, you woke up," you said. "How unfortunate." "You and your childish pranks," I snorted. "I suppose you were going to put that on my chair, then suddenly flick us both into the middle of a space wreck or something?" You grinned sheepishly and set the transmitter down. "It would have been quite a surprise. It might have even been amusing." "I doubt it," I replied. "It probably would have scared me to death." "That's what would have been amusing," you said, laughing. I smiled. I still have not found out what you've been doing, where you've been, and what you plan to do next." "I know," you admitted. "I've been feeling much too exuberant to be serious, but I guess I should not keep you waiting any longer." "Suppose we just walked," I suggested. "You obviously need the exercise, and I find walking stimulates my thoughts." Surprisingly enough, you agreed. We left the drama and began walking slowly toward the gigantic spaceport. You were silent for a while, apparently thinking. Then suddenly you looked up. "Tell me what you've been doing," you said. I was momentarily surprised and could actually think of nothing that I had done. I, I, I presume I've just been studying. Let me see. No, I can't think of a thing of interest that I've done." "Have you not, well, ever yearned to go to space? To see all of these places that you've studied?" I considered this for a moment before replying. Yes, actually, I have, I confessed. But I've wanted to be sure, wanted to know that I could deal satisfactorily with any problems that I might meet. Do you think you can yet? You asked. Yes, at least I can't foresee anything that would prove too difficult. You smiled, a rather strange smile. I sensed something enigmatical in you, a sort of humorous secret. You were obviously bursting to tell me something, yet waiting for the proper moment. We walked in silence for some distance, and I attempted to appear unconcerned. At last, you decided to speak. I've just returned from the outer rim of the Union, you said. Are you familiar with the pocket? I searched my memory. You mean that area into which the Union has not penetrated? A sort of indentation which is closer to the rim of the universe than this? Yes, that's it, you replied. Do you know that ships are requested not to enter the area because there are inhabited planets which are unsurveyed? Yes, I know. You were approaching your secret now, and I admit I was becoming impatient to know what it could be. When we were returning, we discovered we should have to detour a long distance to avoid the pocket, so after discussing it, we decided to pass through it. Although it was uncharted, we knew approximately the position of the stars and felt we could navigate satisfactorily. So, you've been through the pocket? Yes, you sighed. However, in spite of our resolve to stay away from the inhabited planets, we detected some things from a planet which was unmarked on our charts. It was almost on our line of flight, and thinking it would be safe, we sent several members in sealed air cars over it. What type did you use? I asked. Were they small enough to be undetected? That's where the risk was involved. You see, we had no small ones. We assumed that if there were inhabitants, they would be passed off as natural phenomena. Well, and you found something, I finished. Yes, we found something. Incredible things, to be more correct. The planet was well populated, and yet they use animals for labor in some places. You may not believe I saw correctly, but they have power from nuclear fission also. Incredible, I murmured. Not only that, you continued, they have primitive spacecraft, apparently for testing purposes, which are chemically powered. Even as I tell you this, they may have developed an atomic drive. It seems unbelievable, I repeated. I cannot understand what kind of a philosophy would call for the use of animals as power, and at the same time use nuclear energy. There seems to be no explanation, you said simply. There's no question that this paradox exists, and many more besides. Are you quite certain? I asked. Well, we made as accurate a survey as we could in our limited time, and I won't pretend to understand the implications. We've not yet turned our material into the coordinating council. I'm beginning to understand, I said, smiling. You want me to see firsthand the results of your expedition. That's only partly correct. I have another reason, but, well, that must wait. Why? Is it a secret? I asked. No, you replied. I want to tell you the rest, the details, before I. All right, I agree pleasantly. Say on. I will listen. Well, as you begin, the councils requested that ships stay clear of the marked area. We didn't know if we had a reason, and so it was a breach. We don't know whether or not we have material worth presenting. You see, We had no valid reason for entering the area. And though we did, it would be very embarrassing to explain to the council that our passage was without logical cause. Yes, but your findings would justify your trip. They might, you agreed. However, we have no reason for going into the pocket, and not enough data to make it appear as though we did have a reason. Well, I suppose you have a point there. You spacemen are very touchy about conduct. On the other hand, well, why not just forget it? You settled yourself on the ground. I sank to the ground beside you, waiting for your answer. Let me tell you a little bit more about it, you said. You and I both realize that the exploratory ships often enter areas against request, but you also know we selected our council, thereby investing in them a certain dignity of position. We needn't have placed them where they are to advise us if we're going to ignore them. It's a form of insult, and in a circumstance such as this, they might feel obliged to resign, feeling that they were no longer trusted. Admittedly, I said. But if, as you say, their requests are not always observed, which is reasonable, then why couldn't you and your comrades overlook the incident rather than make an issue out of it? That's what we wanted to do, you replied. But to put it bluntly, I feel that this little planet is somehow a threat to the whole Union. Impossible, I said calmly. Oh, I know it seems ridiculous, you answered, and I cannot possibly convey in words the impressions I received. I just have a certainty within me, which escapes expression, that we should deal with this planet, and perhaps others in the system, at once. Maybe then it would be wise to bring it to the attention of the Council, if you can advance any reason for your belief. But Bach, you don't understand. If I were a philosopher, the Council would listen readily, for I would be qualified to make the decision to enter the area, and I would understand these impressions of mine. As a technician, I realize I'm unable to give a clear picture of what I saw, in terms of philosophic evaluation. Do you want me to see the Council, then? I asked. That wouldn't help much. They would accept your statements, but, well, you weren't on the ship, and obviously didn't make the decision to enter the area. Yes, I see. It still might cause difficulties, I agreed. You've not violated the code, but you've certainly stretched it a bit, unless you can justify your action. Well, perhaps, if I gave you the picture on rapport, you might be able to analyze and discover the item which troubles me, you suggested, rather timidly. I am agreeable, I said. You know I don't stand on custom. I closed my eyes and relaxed my mind. Through your mind, I saw the discussion among you and your comrades. I noted also that it would be acceptable for you to pass through this zone. Well, that's one point taken care of, I flashed back to you. Yes, I had thought of that, you commented. If you like to stand on technicalities. You don't want to offend the Council, I replied mentally. A technicality is sufficient. They will accept it for what it is, also accepting your using it as an indication that you have faith in their decisions. Yes, you agreed. But let me show you more. I now saw a rather yellow star looming large before you in the viewplate. Are you still on the plotted course? I asked. Yes, you replied. We detected SIL radiations from the planet, which we're now turning toward. As I understand it, I interrupted, SIL radiations from here indicated a possibility of technical use of nuclear fission? Yes, you telepathed, annoyed. Technically, we're justified in approaching the planet within a distance not less than the diameter of the planet. Unless, I added, there is an item which indicates a new trend or development on the planet. True,